What I got right here is a Super Bowl winning coach, 16 years as head coach of the Saints. He was the NFL Coach of the Year in 06, 9 seasons of 10 wins or more, 7 divisional titles, a member of the Eastern Illinois Hall of Fame. He is appearing courtesy of Zebra Technologies. Sean Payton. Sean, my man, it's been a little while. It's really good to see you. How you feeling?
It's fantastic to see you, and man, I'm feeling good. I appreciate you having me on your show.
It's always good to have you on the show, and it's good to run you down. So it's been about 2 weeks since you made the announcement that you were stepping away from the Saints. I got to know, Sean, what have those 2 weeks been like?
A little unsettling, if you will. I think all of us kind of get into a routine, and we do our thing, and then something like this after 16 years. There's like a punch list of a to-do list of things to do. You know, I've got to return the car and buy a car, because it's a dealer car.
Right.
And I haven't bought a car, I think, in years. I've got to get health insurance. There's certain, just normal stuff. I cleaned out my office. Dennis Allen, of course, was named here 3 days ago as head coach. I'm excited for him. And that you begin to look towards your next chapter. What's next? And that's a little unsettling when you really don't have a plan, but that's okay.
Well, you hit on 5 different things that I was going to ask you about. That's really interesting because when you're an NFL head coach, it's an absolute grind, but it's driven by structure. Every single year, every single month, every single day, every single hour, you have a plan, you have a system, it's laid out. I was going to say, is it liberating or is this whole thing really confusing now?
It's somewhere between liberating and confusing. We do get a calendar as soon as the season's over with. Kevin, my assistant, would put together calendar dates. We'd look at the owners' meetings, the combine dates, draft dates. We'd know training camp dates, and then build it right away. Within 2 weeks, we'd have the calendar all the way through our training camp, and then we hold off until we get the opponent. We know the opponents, but we hold off until we get the schedule. But to your point, though, it's very structured. These are your weeks that you're going to be doing the combine, doing the draft. And when that all goes quiet, I always talk to our players about it. You're going to miss the itinerary. And that just means you're going to miss
the structure. The structure.
Absolutely. And so that's kind of the stage I'm in right now. And you're worried about being late with a bill or changing a dress or just normal stuff that is.
Hey, Sean, welcome to the real world, my man.
Yeah, transitional stuff.
Damn, I didn't pay the phone bill. Why did they turn my lights off?
I got to change a mailing address because, over a period of time, I had stuff just sent to the office. It was easy. That was kind of like the main. And all of a sudden, that's not your main hub anymore. That's unsettling.
Dude, you have to do stuff now. You have to literally do stuff now.
Yeah, that's all right. That's all right.
Sean Payton joining us. So how did you know it was time?
Probably a series of events, probably throughout the season. And ultimately, it was kind of how you were feeling or how I was feeling. Man, it requires so much attention to detail, so much energy. And you don't want to become cynical at the game or cynical at a place that has been so good for me, over that time frame. And there's a little bit of a new challenge, a new floor, if you will, that you're anxious to try. It's so easy to stay. Man, I still had three more years on a contract, and rarely does the coach choose. It's the latter, most of the time. And I'm not saying it's easy to be fired, but it's much easier when you're fired to say, see you later. And when you just leave, there's that question as to why you're leaving. And it's been a long time.
So Sean, why are you leaving? There is that question. Why are you leaving?
It's time. It's time for another challenge. I'd like to try TV. I'd like to be here next year and possibly be involved in the coverage of games. There's a lack of sleep. There's this is hard to sustain over a long period of time. And that has something to do with it. Just, a little bit more healthy lifestyle.
Sean Payton joining us. I've got two thoughts on that. So I started a podcast. It's kind of like my side hustle to my side hustle called the Reinvention Project. And I hit this point in my life where I got into my 50s and I'm like, you know what? I need to do a self-audit. I got to look hard in the mirror. Am I getting better? Am I evolving? Am I still competitive? Am I still relevant? And I'm like, you know what? I'm not getting better. I'm working hard. I'm working as hard as I've ever worked, but I'm not getting better. I need to take a really long look at this. Am I doing the right things? It's like some soul searching. It sounds like that's kind of what you're doing, right?
Yeah, a little bit. Like, hey, what's this end game plan? Relative to your health, relative to your quality of life, relative to and I made that point not to say, hey, I can't tell you honestly, I'm never going to coach again.
Right.
But there's a grind element to it that takes a toll, and you miss things. And my children are still young enough. One's in college. My daughter just finished and is working, living out here. Already in 2.5 weeks, it affords you more opportunities to spend time with them, travel, without like an end date of I have to be back by Monday because we're starting draft meetings. And so we'll see how this year goes, though. I'm anxious to see what's next.
Do you really not know? For instance, there's this narrative that you know what he's going to do. He's going to do TV for a year, and he's going to be great at it, and then he's going to come back and probably to a team that we all know about. But that's the narrative. But I also know this. One of my guys, Bill Cowher, left on his own terms. He did some TV. He never went back to coaching. He's in a really good spot. Mentally, physically, emotionally. He's close to the game. He's good.
Absolutely.
He's good. And I wonder, could that happen with you?
Absolutely. Because I felt like being in the game when that happened, there was the 3 or 4 year period where everyone said, well, Cowher will be a candidate. And then eventually it just stopped.
Right.
And
because they knew he's not a candidate.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that could happen to me.
But you don't know. You're going to get into it and you'll find out, right?
Yeah, I want to be good at it. Now, if I'm awful at it, it might be like, hey, he's got to get back into coaching, or else he's going to start.
I think we know you're going to be good at it. We know you'll be good at it. By the way, also, you're going to have somebody close to you who can help you. Your daughter Megan is already in the media. How much will you go to her for advice? Dads are always telling kids what to do. Will she tell you what to do?
Yeah, yep. She absolutely will. Look, I'm proud of her as any parent would be. And the very first time it hit me that she was in this role, she was doing some pregame work for Fox local in New Orleans. And so she was responsible for the pregame interview. And normally you get into this coach mode and you get the interview questions, you answer them. And then, man, the minute you're looking at your daughter and she's asking the question. And
what was that like?
It was totally unsettling.
Yeah.
You're leaning on every word, and then the question comes, and there's a pause. And, yeah, it was much different than what I expected. But she's enjoying it, and certainly she does provide good insight relative to a lot of silly things.
Sean Payton's joining me. Since your announcement, I've spoken to Demario Davis. I spoke to Cam Jordan. Both of them talked about what you meant to them personally. When you think back on your time with the Saints, are you going to think about the wins, or are you going to think about the players first?
I think the relationships. I think the relationships with the players, the relationship with the coaches. I mentioned in that press conference that 06 team post-Katrina, right after Katrina, there weren't a lot of people wanting to come. All the traffic was leaving. And so I'm really thankful for that initial staff, that initial roster, those families that came despite the unknown relative to schools and housing and all the basic things that we take for granted. That was a special team, and I think as important a season every bit is the 09 or any of the other playoffs teams. I think it's the relationships, though. I think there's a story that goes with a win, and you shift it right away to the people. And so the memories, you pull up a game ball or you pull up a clip of a game, and it goes to people and it goes to personalities, and those are the memories in the locker room, practice. That's what I think I know that's what I'll miss most.
I was going to say, ultimately, if that's what you're going to miss most, is that the thing that would bring you back to it?
Absolutely.
You mentioned the people. What about, before I talked to you about Zebra Technologies, you promoted Dennis, or the team promoted Dennis Allen to be head coach.
Yeah.
The two of you go back a long, long way.
Sure.
How happy are you for him? And then what advice would you give him as he takes over? He's been a head coach, but moving that one seat over or moving to that next room is a totally different deal. What would you tell him?
I think the number one thing is be yourself and be comfortable in yourself. And the minute you try to maybe it doesn't mean you don't evolve and learn and take on a new role, but you still do it within the framework of what made you successful as a defensive coordinator. You obviously communicate well. You obviously relate to the players well. Continue that now and just be a team coordinator. All right? You've been a defensive coordinator, and I think that transition will be smooth. The second thing I would tell them is, look, the office is set up. It's perfect. I cleaned it. All right. No, really. Listen, it's a newer office. It's got a bathroom in it, and in the shower.
How do you leave now, Sean? You got a bathroom. You got your own bathroom.
Listen,
you got a brand new
shower.
office. Is it a corner office with a view?
It's a side office with a view, but it's got a rigged like Seinfeld shower head. And so just be careful that first time that you turn that water pressure on. That would be the warning.
That's really important advice, man. Yeah. Now he's ready to roll.
Be yourself and be heads up for the shower.
And look out for the water pressure.
You'll be good. Those two things.